Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and come back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name is Sage Scott, and I'm based in Kansas City, which is right in the center of the United States. And what I would like to talk to you about today is an unusual food allergy that I have that has made me and two of my kids allergic to all things mammals. But first, a little bit about me. As I said, I live in Kansas City. I have 4 children. I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, and I live on a beautiful 2 acres of wooded land here in Kansas City. And that acreage and the woods is important because it is also a haven for ticks. And the food allergy that 2 of my children and I have is the result of a tick bite that gets in our bloodstream and makes us allergic to, beef, bacon, pork, anything that comes from a mammal. And while that may sound like a bummer to never eat bacon again or cheeseburgers again, or here in Kansas City, barbecue ever again, it's actually a bigger problem than that because there is a lot of mammalian ingredients that are in medications and beauty products. I started a blog called Sage Alpha-Gal to help others who are dealing with this condition, alpha-gal syndrome. There are about 500,000 Americans and many others around the world that are dealing with this condition. And really the credit for the site goes to a very good friend of mine who also has alpha-gal. We were sitting one day, as we do every Friday morning for our coffee. She was in tears telling me about a trip that she had taken out of the country and how hard it was to find safe foods and how frustrating it was to have this allergy where you have to figure so many things out yourself. 500,000 people is a lot of people, but in a country like the US, it's not that big. And the CDC, the Center for Disease Control's, recently did a survey, and many of the medical and healthcare professionals here in the United States don't know much about this condition. So as my friend was lamenting about how frustrating it is to figure this all out yourself and to not have good resources, that's what encouraged me to launch Sage Alpha-Gal. And now it's a resource that helps people with alpha-gal friendly recipes, helps them know what to do when they're first diagnosed so that they know, what steps to take. When I talk to people, the first thing I hear is just overwhelmed. It is just so overwhelming to go from one day, living your life to the stage that you did to this point, to then overnight having to adjust everything you eat, your medications, the products that you use. So it just gives people tips and tricks for living with alpha-gal syndrome. What else can I tell you?
Thank you so much. That is just amazing. Now, how did you discover you had this condition? What were the signs and the symptoms?
So people with alpha-gal syndrome tend to be in one of two categories. My middle daughter that has alpha-gal ended up being diagnosed a year ahead of me. And she's got the category of symptoms that cause her to break out in hives, in rashes. And one of the challenges with this food allergy is, unlike other allergies that are, immediate, if you've ever known someone who has a shellfish allergy or a peanut allergy, it's a very immediate reaction. But with alpha-gal, it can take some time. And so my daughter started, right around bedtime, her senior year in high school. She would just break out with these rashes from head to toe. And it wasn't every night, because we didn't eat red meat every night, but it would just be very sporadic. And it took us a while to figure out what was going on with her. This was probably 6 years ago now, something like that, 5 or 6 years ago. So at the time, we didn't even know that it was alpha-gal. She did a different test and had a protein allergy to beef that just appeared out of nowhere. So at least we started to make some of those changes. Fast forward to a year into the pandemic, all of my kids are home from school. My son went and, got a big order of tacos to bring home one night. And I got really sick afterwards with more of a GI condition. That's the other flavor of allergy that happens with alpha-gal. And at the time I just thought, maybe it was, lower quality beef in the tacos, something like that. I didn't think it was food poisoning because everyone had the same food. But just, I felt like the alien was just trying to get out of my stomach, like the Alien movie. It just really intense GI issues. Another 6 months went by. I had beef again, a similar sort of reaction. But at this point, I had known just from researching it, helping my daughter get through her condition, that was the case. But it was tricky because we react differently.
Wow. Now, you managed to turn your personal journey into a public platform for change. What inspired you to do this? Why did you become an advocate?
I think it was really my conversation with my friend that was just, in tears after a vacation. It should have been fun. It wasn't fun, just things like that. She felt so frustrated, so alone. Even her husband and son that are very supportive, they just don't know what they don't know about things. And, so that just inspired me, gosh, I have an ability to get out there and to help others. And it's really, I'm always sad when someone reaches out to me to tell me that they have alpha-gal, because I know that it's a life-changing moment for them. But at the same time, I feel confident that I can listen to their story, that I can give them some tips to get started on what will be, a change for probably the rest of their lives. And just, helping them through that is really meaningful. There are a lot of people who are impacted by this in more rural areas. There's an older population that is impacted by it more. Think of people who, may live in a smaller community, and so forth. And just being someone to listen to many folks when, nobody else has, that's really meaningful. The other thing is, I feel so lucky that I was able to figure it out fast. I already was somewhat aware. I had already gone through the 6 months of mystery with my daughter. There are some people that the stories just break your heart. I had my gallbladder removed. I had heart tests done. I've had doctors tell me it was all in my head. Like, the number of people who know there is something wrong with their bodies, but cannot get their healthcare professional to take them seriously. That's heartbreaking, right? You know your body. So I think, what I would tell everyone, whether it's an alpha-gal condition or something else, your body, trust yourself, be an advocate for yourself. Don't give up if you know that something is not right.
So what are some of the common misconceptions about alpha-gal that you wish people understood?
Gosh, This isn't exactly the answer to your question, but it's something I think that ties into it. Many times people don't believe it's a real condition.
Yeah.
Even after you've had the blood test, you're showing the symptoms. And that can be physicians who don't know, that can be people in the healthcare profession, that can be friends and family members. And again, I think the fact that it takes a little bit of a delay before you see the reaction
Yeah.
causes some of that. The other thing that I wish is, when I hear about people who go out to eat at a restaurant, this is not simply a life choice. If you're vegan, you're choosing that life, and I respect that choice.
Mhm.
But if you're vegan, you are most likely not, you likely don't have to be so so focused on how your food is prepared to be concerned about cross contamination, as an example.
Yeah.
That's a real concern when you have an allergy.
Wow. Now, you often share practical tips for living with AGS. Can you highlight a few that have made the biggest difference for you?
Yeah, one of the things I learned the hard way is that unfortunately, it's not as simple as, looking for beef and pork and lamb in the ingredients. You really have to go a lot deeper. So, helping people know what sort of items are going to be listed on a food label, on a medication label that may be a hidden source of mammalian triggers. That's something that I think is really helpful. In my case, I didn't realize it until I met with my current allergist that I was taking supplements, think of vitamins or things like that you might take that were in a gel cap. And of course, gelatin is often derived from cows or pigs. And I could not find the source of my just excruciating joint pain. Like, I thought I had gotten everything out of my system and purged from my house. And that was a common factor that was there. The other thing that's important for people to remember is people who have alpha gal react to different things in different ways. Some people react to dairy, some people don't. Some people are sensitive to gelatin, like I was in the gel caps, other people aren't. So another really practical thing that I help people do is there's an allergy trigger tracker on my site. It's a free download. It's available for anyone. And that just really helps you get your arms around you and your reactions and what things you need to be worried about and avoid, and which things are okay.
So it goes way beyond just food. Gosh,
Yes.
it's incredible. Now, what role does community support play in managing AGS and similar chronic conditions?
I can't talk about other chronic conditions, but I will tell you that the alpha gal community is really, really dependent on each other, and it's a very strong community. Typically, because there are 500,000 people in the US that have varying degrees of support, understanding, resources available to them. And one of the things I think about when I think about the alpha gal community is a quote by Michael J. Fox, who had said something about his Parkinson's as a condition of, the people who are living with the condition, those are the experts. We're the experts because
Wow.
we know, what works, what doesn't work. We can be there for each other. And even when there are different sensitivities, those who have to avoid dairy, those who don't, just having a group of people who have been there, who have done that can help you navigate this new normal is really powerful and really, really helpful.
Oh, that's fascinating. Now, the CDC reported that 42% of healthcare providers have never heard of AGS. How do you advocate for better medical education?
I think the first step is you have to be prepared to take care of yourself, to be an advocate for yourself, to know how to navigate the system that you're with.
Yeah.
Here in Kansas City, I'm lucky that I do have an amazing allergist. I do have an incredible primary care physician. My primary care physician isn't an expert in alpha-gal, but she's willing to like roll up her sleeves, research it, be there every step of the way. But something I can tell you is, I had to go to the emergency room a couple of weeks ago, not related to alpha-gal. And this was the first time since I was diagnosed about 4 years ago that I had to go navigate that. And, while I was in, I had a cut. So, I'm bleeding, I'm in pain, I'm trying to keep ice on it. I was there by myself. And I had to think, oh gosh, I have to think about stitches. I have to think about antibiotics. I have to think about the cleaning solution. I have to make sure that the pain medication they give me, that all of those things are safe for me. And the emergency physician said, oh, alpha-gal, that's the red meat tick bite thing, right? And I said, yes. And he's like, okay, like he took great care of my hand, but he didn't know how to go any deeper. So I'm on my phone, like Googling it, making sure that, I could navigate everything. So, be prepared for that to happen at any moment, and just, be prepared to do that and know where would you go if you had to figure it out yourself in a situation like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's got to be very, very frustrating. Now, what keeps you motivated on days when living with alpha-gal feels particularly hard?
I think back to a life lesson that I've had for as long as I can remember, thanks to my mom. So I'm a military brat. My mom had me by herself for about 13 months while my dad was overseas during the Vietnam War period. And one day, I'm sure I was just a super bratty toddler, I'm sure I can imagine that. And she was feeling really down, really sorry for herself, exhausted from being a single mom, to a bratty toddler. And she was at the pediatrician's office with me. And in walks another military mom. She's visibly pregnant. She has 2 other little boys in tow with her, and her husband is MIA. My dad was safe where he was at. He was not in a situation like that. And my mom immediately realized there was lots for her to be thankful about. That woman was in a much tougher spot. And so my whole life, that has just been a guiding, like anytime I feel down, it's like, take a minute, things could be worse. Is alpha-gal life changing? Yes. Yes, it is. Are there much worse conditions? Many, many, many worse conditions. So if I need to have a minute to have a pity party, do that, but then find a way to pull yourself up, find a way to be positive, find a way to help someone else, to just find your positive energy, because that will pull you up, whereas negative thoughts will just bring you down.
So what advice would you give to someone who's newly diagnosed and feeling overwhelmed with all of this?
I think the most important thing is to really get your arms around what is safe for you and what do you need to immediately get out of your house, out of your system, out of your life.
Yes.
For every alpha-gal, that's mammalian meat, like beef, pork, lamb. Those items are just, you cannot have them, full stop. Other things you want to just be careful about. You want to test the waters. You want to see if they're okay for you, like dairy, like some of those, gel caps. Not everyone responds to those. So, just make sure that you understand where your guardrails are. And that it's amazing how just not being in pain, just not being broken out in a rash, it's amazing how once you get past that, you can start to do, more beyond that. So I think that's a really important first step.
Now, how can family and friends best support a loved one who's living with AGS?
I think it's just, being an advocate for them. If you're in a situation where your loved one's in the ER, like you be the one that's Googling, researching, able to take care of that. In the house, my family, it doesn't help that 2 of my 4 kids also have alpha-gal, but the whole family eats alpha-gal friendly. So there's nothing that comes in this house that's a trigger for any of us that have it. So, It's asking people to give up a lot if that's what your family chooses to do. But that's really helpful. And I just make sure when we go out, my daughter has like my youngest one that's, you know, a big steak lover, that she always gets that when she's out of the house, because she's
Fine.
really sweet about giving it up when she's with me.
Yeah, so she's not having to really give it up completely. It's just she can have it so long as she's not in the same environment as those who are sensitive to it.
Right. Yes.
So you
Yeah,
guys have a
my youngest is the only one without alpha gal, so we call her beta.
wow. Yeah, that's got to be challenging, you know, for a whole family to be experiencing something and then just one is on the peripheries of all of this. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of alpha gal awareness and advocacy?
You know, I would like to be in a environment where anytime you show the symptoms, physicians know to conduct the very simple blood test that tells you if you're positive or not. I
Yeah.
would like my website to be a really helpful, welcoming resource for people who
Mhm.
are newly diagnosed or the loved ones of people who are diagnosed that are trying to be good
Yes.
advocates and help them. And I want it to be a source of you know, healthy, delicious, alpha gal friendly recipes that even if you've been doing this for many years, you can still find something, you know, tasty, safe, delicious, easy to
Yeah.
prepare that, you know, is new on the site.
Wow. Now you've built a very supportive online community through Sage Alpha Gal. How important is the community building for chronic illness management and mental health?
I think it's really important. You know, just knowing that someone else can relate to what you're going through is really important. And I'm really glad you brought up the mental health component, because when
Yes.
you think about, you know, pick any country in the world, pick any community, any culture, food
Mm.
is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
And here in Kansas City, we're the barbecue capital of the world. You can't even land in our airport and not smell like slow roasted, you know, beef and pork. It's everywhere in the airport. Like any place cool that you want to be in Kansas City smells like barbecue. So, you know, it's just, it's hard to express just how disheartening it can be to you know, have a condition like that that impacts weddings and celebrations and backyard barbecues. You know, food is just a part of everything. So
Yes.
you know, helping people get through just the emotional feelings that go with that, I think is
There's
important.
quite a bit of isolation there too.
Right.
You can't quite be part of mainstream society anymore. You're on the fringes.
Yeah, you know, you have to think about, you know, an office potluck or a neighborhood barbecue, like everything you either have to prepare yourself, make yourself. And, you know, folks want to make sure that they're safe, don't get me wrong, but I also feel like people don't want to be a nuisance. They don't want to be extra work. And it's,
Mm,
that part can just be really exhausting to navigate, and unfortunately some people deal with it by just avoiding the situation, so then you're missing out on that community, that bonding, that time with your friends and neighbors.
yeah.
And it can really take a toll on you.
So outside of raising awareness for AGS, what personal passions or hobbies keep you energized and hopeful on your own healing journey?
I really love to travel, and I feel very fortunate that I haven't let this food allergy stop me. And
Right.
it's one thing to, there's sun right in my eye. I'm trying to,
I was trying to avoid it.
maybe if I'll go this way. Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Um, um, yeah, I'd love to travel, and I'm really excited that I have not let this stop me
Yeah,
from traveling. And it's one thing to travel nearby in your home country where you know what to expect.
yeah,
And you know, I've been able to still travel abroad and just plan differently, prep differently. And I don't want this to slow me down. I don't want this to be an issue with that, even if I have
Yes.
to pack a whole suitcase of protein bars that are safe to go explore and do it. So that's something that I think is helpful.
I love it. So if I was to instantly teleport you anywhere in the world today, where would you go?
I've got to say, I would love to be in your corner of the world. That's been on my bucket
Okay.
list for a long time.
Yeah,
Yes, I think that'd be such a lovely place to be.
yeah, Australasia is a unique place. Now, what
Yes.
would you say is your favorite quote or personal mantra that you live by?
Oh, goodness. I think it has something to do a little bit with that story I shared about my mom that she just kind of imparted on all of us. I think, try to find the positive in everything you do. And you'll be amazed what putting positive energy and positive thought into something, even when it's challenging, will do for you. In fact, one of the things that I wrote for the blog a couple of months ago was, 5 benefits of having alpha gal. Because as I talk to
Oh,
people, there are a surprising number of benefits, even if you
yeah,
didn't choose this life and it chose you, of having alpha gal. For example, an alpha gal friendly diet is predominantly a Mediterranean diet. We can eat
yes.
chicken, we can eat fish, we can eat, all of the plant-based things that are out there. So when you're giving up a lot of hamburger and steaks and barbecue, that healthier diet is good for you.
Yeah,
It's better for the environment. It's takes a lot less water, a lot less land to raise chicken and eggs and soybeans for tofu than it does to raise, cows and pigs. There are
right.
many people that tell me that a lot of their medical numbers, whether it's their pre-diabetic, their cholesterol, things like that, have all
Yeah,
drastically improved now that they've
yes.
had to adopt this diet. So there's a lot to be said about just staying positive and looking for that silver lining.
I like that because you don't really think about it. We always, when you're hit with a medical condition, you look at all the negative things, all the things you can't do, but you've really reframed it in a nice way that you can look at the positives of that lifestyle change as well. That is so beautiful. Now, I like to end my interview with two questions. In the one, I'm going to teleport you back into the past to that younger woman who was diagnosed with this condition. It changed her life. If you could teleport back and go and give her three nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those three nuggets of wisdom be?
Okay, well, this isn't that wise, but it's the first thing I can think of. It would be go eat those dishes that you miss every day now, one last time before you know that you can't. We're talking in and out double double. We're talking, a really great, burnt ends at the best barbecue place here in Kansas City. So definitely, I would tell myself to go do that before it's no longer available. Um, Gosh, do they all have to be related to Alpha Gal or
Anything, it could be any life advice you want to give.
gosh? I think that for sure. Definitely stay positive. Even when you just, those days when you just want to feel sorry for yourself and cry, go get it out of your system. Be positive. And then I think the other would be, lend a hand, help others who haven't gone through the journey, gone through the phases of grief, gone through the evolution of adapting to their new normal as you have. Give them a hand and help them any way you can. And I think with that also goes helping others who are doing a lot in this space to try to make a difference. There are people who are working to change rules in Washington to get alpha-gal made a reportable disease so that we have a clear knowledge of everyone who has it, supporting them, supporting the folks who are also doing recipes. I think just being part of that community is important as well.
Fantastic. Sage, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today. Really enlightening. It's interesting to get to know the other side of what you are going through, and very, very educational, I have to say. And
Thank
thank you
you.
to everybody who's tuned in. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you know somebody who has this condition or some of these symptoms, now you have a resource of where to start. So I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Sage, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.